Hard to believe, but the countdown is close to another brand new year, and for most of us, that means New Year's resolutions and a rush to get things done before December 31st. And if you're like most people, some of those resolutions and last-minute chores are going to involve your finances, and that's great, but it can be either a waste of time or even counterproductive if you're not focusing on the right chores and the right resolutions. But don't stress, because we're devoting today's show to making sure that doesn't happen. It's time to tune out the hype and focus on the facts that matter to you, the income generation. Let's get started. Get ready to separate reality from myth.
With us, David Scranton.
David Scranton.
David Scranton.
David Scranton.
But David Scranton says, hey, not so fast.
How does it affect the markets? How does it affect the economy? Thanks to efficiencies in new technology and a staff of veteran analysts and portfolio managers, Sound Income Strategies strives to set new standards and bring institutional style investing to your portfolio. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Income Generation. I'm David Scranton, your host. You know, there are certain times of year when it's a good idea to devote just a little bit of extra time and attention to your money. And the end of the year is one of those. Just as you make a holiday shopping list every year, it's also smart to make a year-end financial checklist. And this year, you won't even need to check it twice, because on today's show, we're going to give you some great ideas for what to put on that checklist. And if you're thinking about resolutions to help improve your financial picture in the new year and beyond, today's show can help with that as well. Joining me today is a man who's helped more than a few people get their personal finances in order, Larry Winget, the host of A&E's Big Spender. And a little later, we're going to welcome Jeff Small, author of the timely new book, Turning Financial Planning a Right Side Up. And in honor of our first full year and a half on the air, we're going to be taking a look at some of the amazing people who've joined us here on The Income Generation to share their insights on how you can protect and grow your hard-earned money. Plus, I'll be sharing just a little bit of a sneak preview of my upcoming 2018 market forecast, which you definitely won't want to miss. First, though, let's talk about why paying a little bit of extra attention to your money at year's end is so incredibly important. You know, for many of us, the holiday season's a time to throw caution to the wind where our money's concerned. We knowingly overspend on gifts and parties, and, you know, hey, Christmas only comes once a year, right? So why not? Well, even as a financial advisor, I get that. And even I can be guilty of getting caught up in the spirit of the season, just like everybody else. So yes, I know the spirit of giving can get contagious, but I also know it's possible to feel less guilty about your seasonal spending spree if you take the time to make sure your overall financial picture is in good order, and in particular, your retirement plan. Now, that can be challenging during this busy time of year, I know, but it's also important because there are certain key financial deadlines that fall on December 31st. If you can manage to beat them, you're more likely to enjoy the holidays knowing that you're on track to meet your long-term financial goals, even if you do decide to overspend a little bit on things such as perhaps gifts for the grandchildren. And the subject of deadlines brings us to the first item that should be on your year-end financial checklist, which is taxes. One of the most common financial mistakes people make is waiting until February or March to meet with their CPA or advisor to talk about taxes. The problem is that by that time, the deadline is past us. It's too late to correct mistakes or take advantage of some tax savings opportunities because December 31st already went by. That's what I call reactive tax planning. Proactive tax planners, on the other hand, schedule a meeting with their tax preparer or CPA before the end of the year. And they do it every single year. Why? Because tax laws change, guidelines change, and they want to be able to do that planning when they can do something proactively to save taxes for that year. Now, this year, of course, big changes may be in store for tax laws and guidelines, the biggest in possibly 30 years. And as we tape the show, approval of President Trump's tax reform plan and its impact on 2017's taxes are making the rounds on the Hill, and the final details will be decided around December 18th, the day or so after this show airs. All the same, odds are extremely small that any moves you make to save money on your taxes before the end of the year are going to be undone by whatever happens on Capitol Hill. So if you haven't scheduled that tax meeting with your advisor yet, please, please, please try to squeeze it in before New Year's Eve. Then congratulate yourself as you check it off your list. The season of giving is actually a great time to give, financially speaking. That's because the IRS deadline for making a charitable contribution that you can deduct from your taxes is also December 31st. That's a good thing to keep in mind after you've scheduled your tax planning meeting, especially if you have charitable organizations you feel strongly about. Rather than donating cash, for example, some people might donate highly appreciated securities. This can also help you avoid capital gains tax on those securities, as well as giving you a present income tax charitable deduction. Now, if you have plans to give a significant monetary gift to someone in your family, this is also a great time of year to work with your advisor to set that up. For example, a 529 college fund might make a great tax advantage Christmas gift for a grandchild. Beyond that, you might want to ask your advisor about the Qualified Charitable Distributions Law, which allows you to transfer a gift of up to $100,000 directly to a qualified charity from an IRA without counting it toward your adjusted gross income. And in addition to the tax savings, this can count toward or even used to fully satisfy your required minimum distributions for that year in case you're over the age of 70 and a half. So it's a great option for many, many people. And another good example of how giving can be both personally rewarding and financially smart. Now, if you've never talked with your advisor about estate planning, having that initial conversation before the end of the year can also be a nice Christmas gift to yourself and to your loved ones. Even if you're confident in your financial plan overall, it's important to understand that it might still be vulnerable if you ignore this very important topic of estate planning. Any number of factors, from lawsuits to tax penalties, can jeopardize your assets if you haven't taken the right steps to protect them legally. If you have a good advisor, odds are that he can connect you with a qualified estate planning attorney to help you create a plan that fits with your financial situation and your legacy goals. If you caught our show all about estate planning earlier this year, you know there are huge benefits to having such a plan in place. Among them are avoiding unnecessary legal costs and taxation, protecting yourself against things like Medicaid spend down, and most importantly, protecting your loved ones from legal headaches, arguments, and having to make difficult emotional decisions at a very difficult time. Now, if any of the checklist items I've mentioned so far seem daunting, keep in mind that your advisor can help you understand exactly what you need to know to take action. The key is to have that meeting and that conversation and discuss these things that you think are most relevant and beneficial to you, and to do it before December 31st, if at all possible. Now, as it turns out, we've got a couple more checklist items to cover a little later in the show, but right now, I'd like to welcome our first guest, acclaimed author, speaker, and personal finance expert, Larry Winget. My old friend Larry Winget is an icon in the world of personal development, self-help, and fiscal responsibility. His fame is the result of 6 national bestsellers and thousands of stage and television appearances. As the host of A&E's Big Spender, Larry visited people in financial crisis and advised them on how to solve their problems and how to avoid repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. We're happy to have him back on our show again. Larry, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, I want to start by sharing a few of your book titles, which make me laugh every time. The first is Shut Up, Stop Whining, and Get a Life. The second, Your Kids Are Your Own Fault. The third, You're Broke Because You Want to Be. And last but certainly not least, my favorite, Grow a Pair. So I know that one of the things that you're a big believer in is the importance of personal accountability when it comes to your money. So what words of advice can you give to people who maybe haven't had personal accountability up to this point, but now want to make that New Year's resolution and really want to take control of their finances?
Well, first of all, resolutions don't really come true. Plans come true. So I would tell people, if you want to be more accountable and responsible with your money, get yourself a plan. I would say the number one thing you should do in terms of a plan for your money is to figure out where you stand. It's remarkable to me How many people don't have a clue where their money even goes? So sit down with a sheet of paper, get yourself a pen, and write down how much money you have to work with, who you pay, when you pay them, how much is left over. You know, it's really pretty simple. Figure out how much you earn and how much you've got to spend every month, and hopefully you end with a positive number. So you don't want to be a red number down there. So figure that out first. That's the first place to start. And most people never do just that one basic thing.
Now, I can hear some people now listening to the show saying, well, I'm an income earner. I save a lot of money. I earn a lot of income. So I don't have to worry about budgeting. He's talking about budgeting. But
yeah, I am.
Isn't it true that even high income earners can benefit from budgeting, that there's a lot of money going out the door they might not even know about?
You know, I love it when people say, well, I'm a high income earner, or I'm this and that, and I don't have to do that. The reality is, a new study, research just proved, 60% of Americans either spend all or more than they earn. So unless I'm only talking to the 40% out there, which I don't believe I am, I'm telling you 6 out of 10 people listening to me right now spend all their money or more money than they're earning. They've got to get control.
And you might get somebody who's watching our show right now who combined income makes, let's say, $300,000 between two spouses, and maybe they're in their 50s, and you know they're maxing out their 401ks, so they're feeling like, wow, I'm saving a lot of money. I'm putting $20-some thousand a year a piece in the 401ks. But still, isn't it true that a lot of times when they go through things with a fine-tooth comb, they might be able to find another 10, 20, maybe 30,000 a year that could go to their balance sheet, that could maybe help them retire earlier or do better things during retirement?
Yeah, I contend that about every single person, regardless of their level of income, has about 10% of waste in there. So when you actually sit down with pen and paper, you can find a lot of waste. You know, people have always started to think in terms of nice to haves and needs and wants and all that. I think you have to think about needs, wants, and can't live withouts. And most of the things you want, there's 10% in there that you're currently spending money on that you could just do away with. Spend your money first on the things you can't do without, then on your needs, and then cut back 10%. That's not very much. And there's a lot of waste that goes on in every single person's life, regardless of how much money they earn or don't earn, that they could fix immediately.
You know, we come back from the break, I want to talk about credit card debt and how much money could be going out the window there. But in the last 15 seconds or so in this segment, tell us, you know, why is it, do you think, that people get in so much trouble with credit cards?
I think because we have a tendency to live by other people's expectations, and we want to keep up, and we want to look good, so we end up buying things that we don't need and can't afford to look good in front of people we don't even like.
The dreaded keeping up with the Joneses. Wow.
Exactly.
You're so right, Larry. Larry, stay with us. We'll be right back. And for our viewers, you stay with us also. We have many more words of wisdom from Larry Winget. We are back with Larry Winget, star of A&E's The Big Spender and personal finance expert. Larry, welcome back.
You bet.
So I have to tell you, that incredible collection of cowboy boots sitting right behind you, is that a want to have or is that a must have?
That's not fair. For me, those were need to haves. I got to tell you, that's so much a part of my brand. I have over 100 pairs behind me, and I've got 40 more pairs in my other closet. But I love my cowboy boots.
That's what makes you such a more interesting guy than me. I've got a collection of boat shoes, you know, commonly known as docksiders, but the problem is they're all brown. They all look the same, so it's kind of boring. But
it is boring.
That's right. It's not as cool as what you have behind you there. So credit cards, you know, teach our viewers a little bit about, and I know they know this, but still, I want to have them hear it from you. What the impact that having credit card debt, for example, really does to people's ability to save and invest over the long run. People, I think, oh, I'm getting 10% interest. That's not so bad. But what's the long-term impact of having that kind of debt?
Well, you know, when you look at where we really stand in this country in terms of credit card debt, the average household has $15,500 in credit card debt. And the average annual percentage rate is 15%. That's just on average. If you have a credit issue, you're paying much higher than that, and chances are your average credit card indebtedness is higher than the 15,500 as well. And when you figure out if you're making minimum payments, you owe $10,000 and you're making minimum payments, 25 years from now, you still haven't paid the principal off. You're going to spend all that money just paying the interest. So it doesn't make any sense long term to have that kind of debt. People often ask me, I'd like to invest. Where should I invest? And I always say, I'm not an investment counselor, but I can tell you this. If you have a credit card, pay it off. That's 15% return, and you're not going to find that in most of your investments.
Okay.
Pay off your credit card debt first.
Okay, Larry, but as you implied at the beginning, you said, it's not about New Year's resolution. It's about a plan. It's about a strategy. So someone who's not self-disciplined like this, what's a good plan for them to be able to get these credit cards paid off? How do you get people psychologically, mentally to make that change and have that self-discipline?
Well, the first thing you do is you really do have to get out a sheet of paper and write down who you owe, how much you owe, and when it's due. Then you look at any excess money. And everybody has excess money, and if you don't, figure it out. You can cut 10%, as we just talked about, and then start whittling down on those credit cards just as quickly as you possibly can. However, you cannot whittle down on your credit cards if you don't stop charging on those credit cards. So put them away and hide them from yourself if you don't have any discipline. The key is don't keep adding to the debt. Only spend what you can afford to pay for, and don't go deeper in debt while you're trying to pay it off. And so stop spending on your credit card, buy what you can afford to buy, and whittle down with every extra dollar as much credit card debt as you possibly can.
And then let's say I get that paid off. Tell our viewers in the final 15 seconds or so, I know you're not an investment counselor, but now how do I adopt that self-discipline to start investing once I paid off those credit cards?
Well, then you figure out where your level of risk is. If you're very risk averse, don't put much in something that's going to possibly lose you some money. So find out what your level of risk is, how much you can afford to really invest. Meet with a good investment person, somebody who understands you and your long-term goals.
Sure.
Not just your short-term goals, but where you want to be in 10, 15, 20 years. That's very important to think long-term.
Larry, I love it. Great words of wisdom, and we have to leave it there right now. But thanks for coming. I hope you'll come back. It's been a pleasure, Larry. Thank you.
I appreciate you having me.
So what a year it's been so far for the financial markets. The question becomes, are more record market highs in store for the new year, or will reality finally crash the party on Wall Street? I will talk a lot more about that a little later as I share a sneak peek of my upcoming 2018 market forecast show coming up in just 2 weeks. But for now, let's focus on today, the present. As you know, the stock market has been on a fairly steady tear ever since President Trump's election over a year ago. But the question becomes based upon what? The answer, as I've said many times on the show, is based mainly on hope and optimism that President Trump will deliver on all of his economic promises. Now, don't get me wrong. As for now, yes, the economy has shown some improvement already for a variety of reasons. But it certainly hasn't shown the kind of historic growth rate that you'd normally expect to be able to see record high stock market levels. So the question becomes, is it sustainable? All of which brings us to the next item on our year-end checklist, which is to reassess your financial risk. Now, if this artificially overinflated market is, as I believe, basically a balloon in search of a pin to land on, then now might be an absolutely great time to make sure that your portfolio is not in danger of taking an enormous hit when this balloon eventually pops. At the same time, now might also be a perfect time to reduce your risk-based investments with the most basic investment logic, and that is buy low and sell high. Let's face it, the markets are still at a record high right now, and although they could climb even higher if President Trump's tax plan goes through, I believe there's also a good chance we could see that balloon pop certainly sometime in 2018 and watch the markets plunge into the third major correction of what I believe is our current long-term secular bear market cycle, a correction on par with that from 2000 to 2002 and again the one in 2008. So reassessing your risk every year is important. Why? Because carrying too much risk can be one of the surest ways to sabotage your long-term financial goals. Which brings us to our final checklist item, which is to re-examine your goals. As we've discussed many times on this show, the best way to make sure that you're on track to meet your retirement goals is to first be sure that you know exactly what your goals are. But it's also very important to revisit them at the end of every year because, let's face it, goals change. And sometimes they might need to be adjusted based upon new developments or circumstances in your life. Moreover, your financial strategy may periodically need to be adjusted to make sure it still aligns with your personal goals and isn't actually jeopardizing them, which oftentimes can unknowingly happen. And as I've discussed on the show many, many times, in my experience, most people have what I call purpose-based retirement goals, meaning that they're saving and investing for a particular purpose, for certain goals, not just to accumulate the maximum amount of wealth possible. In fact, in most cases, that purpose is simply to have enough retirement income to be able to maintain their lifestyle, travel, and enjoy their favorite pastimes without worrying about running out of income or suffering a major financial loss. In fact, one of the main reasons I became a specialist in income-based investing is that I discovered long ago that it was the best approach suited to helping people achieve those purpose-based goals. That was true nearly 20 years ago when I changed my business model from a stock market-based model to the income-based model, and it's still true today. Now, speaking of specialists in income-based investing, I'd now like to welcome one of the best in the business, Jeffrey Small from Arbor Financial in the Melbourne area here in Florida. More and more, Jeff Small is becoming a huge name in the financial services world. He lives right here in Florida and has over 30 years of experience as a financial advisor. Nationally, he's a highly sought-after speaker who can be seen and heard regularly on such top shows as Fox Business, Bloomberg Radio, and of course, The Income Generation, where Jeff's taken part in some of our advisor roundtables in the past. You might recognize him from that. So we're glad to have him back as a featured guest to talk about his new book, Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up, which is one of the best single books that I've read on this subject of saving and investing in today's risky environment. Jeff, welcome and congratulations.
Hey, David, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me today.
So good to have you back. And so tell me, financial planning, you're implying it's upside down. Now, I've often thought it might be a little bit sideways, but I've never thought of it as being upside down. So why is it upside down?
Well, it's upside down for a number of reasons, but the book really provides insight and education for investors that they can determine how to best chart their costs and what risk they should have and what the Goldilocks zone will be for the next 5, 10, or 15 years at investing. Even with 20 to 25% upside to the market there might be, they still have to figure in what kind of risk exposure they have, and the book shows them how to do that.
And that Goldilocks zone, give us a 20-second definition of what that is.
Well, the Goldilocks zone is cash. The cash bucket is too cold because it's not earning that much. The risk bucket is too high because it's too hot and it's very risky. But in the middle are things that generate between 4 and 7% in the area of fixed income on an annualized basis.
So let's take just a moment. We'll be right back with a lot more from Jeff Small's new book, Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up. Stay with us.
Read David J. Scranton's groundbreaking new book, Return on Principle, 7 Core Values to Help Protect Your Money in Good Times and Bad. Discover practical solutions to the financial challenges facing today's generation of retirees and near retirees. Learn the truth about Wall Street, the financial media, and the secrets they try to hide from everyday investors. This isn't just another book about investing. Working Americans who have lived through 2 major stock market crashes and the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression in the past 16 years don't need another book about investing. David Scranton's approach to financial planning is a holistic system designed for maximum protection, strategic growth, and reliable income regardless of market conditions. Stop planning for retirement with your fingers crossed. Read Return on Principle, 7 Core Values to Help Protect Your Money in Good Times and Bad. Available now.
We're back with Jeff Small, and we're talking about his new book, Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up. Now, Jeff, of course, you just saw the advertisement for your competition in books here, my book, of course. And, if I were just a layperson, I have to tell you, there's only one thing that might cause me to buy my book instead of yours. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
Well, because, I kind of had a little smile on the cover of my book, and it's funny, when I look at the front of your book here, you're so serious that you look a little bit like a serial killer on the front of the book. Has anybody ever told you that? I mean,
No. Everybody likes the cover, Dave. I just think you're jealous because I'm better looking than you.
I guess the reality is that this is serious business, and you want to send a message that you're serious about this. And,
That's right.
And good for you. So tell us, what motivated you to write a book?
Well, the book really is a 33-year brain dump of everything that I've learned in the business that consumers need to know going forward. So in terms of advocating for yourself and educating yourself correctly, people make the biggest mistakes with their money with lack of knowledge. And this book will provide insight to prevent those mistakes. So really, it's a must-read from that perspective.
And one of the mistakes that you talk about in the book, I know, is you talk about taking too much risk. You even go as far as at one point to say, why you should take some money out of the stock market. Now, you're not going to get any argument from me, as you well know, but tell our viewers about that a little bit.
Well, the market's about 90% of the all stocks in the market right now are at their all-time highs or higher. And so every time the stock market's gotten this high, there's been a chance for a major correction at some point. Now, there could be some more upside to the market. Nobody really knows. But the book will give you the insight and teach you how to calculate the effect of risk and how to maintain a net rate of return of greater than 5% going forward. Now, David, we look at the market the last 17 years. The market earned before the Trump bump 3.9% in the first 16 years, but the last 17, it's barely earned 5%. So is the risk really worth the reward?
Right. That's 5%, including dividends, what the market's earned really over the last 18 years, which isn't very good. And you're talking about earning 4 to 7% in interest and dividends. You're not talking about crossing your fingers and toes and hoping that something goes up in value. You're talking about getting the bird in the hand, correct?
That's correct. We're going into fixed income assets.
And that's that Goldilocks zone. Not too hot. I love that. It's so great, so perfect. Not too hot, not too cold, just right.
Just right.
So, okay, so I get that part of it. But if I'm 30 years old and I'm watching the show, then the question becomes, okay, I can afford to take risk. I'm 30 years old. This is my retirement money. I'm not going to retire for 30, 40 years. Does this apply to me?
Well, it really does, because the market has put investors in a state of hypnosis with bullishness. And so now we're entering a degree of complacency, and that's where investors, no matter what their age, have the greatest risk and make the biggest mistakes. In other words, they get sloppy.
Yeah, and the returns early on oftentimes have the biggest effect at how much money people can accumulate. In fact, as you well know, the most important years when it comes to investment returns are the earliest years to get a lot of momentum built with your investments, and then the latest years right before you're ready to retire. So with that in mind, at what age would you say that virtually everyone watching the show, starting at what age, should go out right now and buy a copy of this book?
Well, the book is really designed for anybody, but specifically it should be for people 50 and over.
50 and over.
And how to measure the efficiency of their money so they can understand the impact of risk. Because the deficit, or where financial planning is backwards and not right side up, is the industry in financial services doesn't teach investors how to calculate their net rate of return going backwards historically or forwards, and how to maintain that. And the wealthiest people in the world, from insurance companies to Warren Buffett, utilize the strategies that we adopt in the book.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. There's the few that really understand it, and then there's the many who don't understand it. And so your mission is to get people to understand the reality and how this is calculated and what they could do about it.
Well, there's a void in financial planning, and what we're trying to do is fill that void and show investors that there's another way to accomplish their goals.
You know, it's funny because you and I have both written books, and sometimes people see the end result and you think, well, okay, well, he wrote a book, he must like to write, he's a good writer, it's easy. But there are times when you're writing a book where the publisher is pushing on a deadline. And then in our industry, we have compliance departments too that put pressure on us. And the publisher wants a deadline, the compliance department's wanting something rewritten. And there's some of those points, just like when you run a marathon, they say, you get to the 20-mile mark and there's a point between mile 20 and mile 26 where you're asking, why did I run this marathon in the first place? And I know there's always points at the end of writing a book when you start to feel that way. And I know you had one because you and I were on the phone one day and had that conversation. And I could sentiment, I understand the sentiment because I went through the same thing. So what kind of emotions did you go through? What made you stick with it when you were in the last 6 miles of the marathon and you wanted to just give up and say, forget about it?
The core message to help people, to show them a different way of investing, to help them protect their money, to provide them insight that they don't get from the media or from Wall Street.
Yeah.
It was the message.
And how else do you get the message out to people? What else do you do to try to get people to understand? I know you're always on Fox Business News. sometimes on regular Fox News. This night I'm sitting back watching TV, and next thing you know, I see expert Jeffrey Small getting introduced, and I think I spilled my soda right on the sofa. I was like, wait a minute, I know that guy.
Well, I have gone global. I was on CNBC World Tuesday night.
Nice.
So I'm now global.
That's great.
Not just domestic, but global. So
I have to admit, my first thought was I was kind of sad. I said, here's a guy who's on my show all the time, and he's cheating on me. He's cheating on me. How could he possibly do that? But I can see why you're in such high demand. So, again, let's talk about the book. What are you hoping people get out of the book? I mean, chances are they're not going to read the book. They're going to understand some of the gotchas. They're not going to read the book and be able to go home and do everything themselves. But what are you really hoping that the message is that they get, and how they solve issues if they have them?
Well, earlier in the show, you mentioned all the various cycles, the down cycles, the last two that we've had, and I, watched my clients and people that I knew after they became clients go through that. I don't want folks to go through that again. I want them to experience the fact that they can have growth without risk, but they don't know how, because when folks come into our office, David, they have two types of money in cash or money in risk and growth, and they don't know about the middle. Because
too hot and too cold.
Is so underpromoted.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about it.
So as a kind of sort of a final thought, the markets right now, I think have surprised a lot of people. I know I'm one of them, and I know that you're another. So what do you think is going to happen in 2018? If you had to make your best guess, what do you see? What do you see happening? Is this momentum going to carry through the year, or is it not? What's your, I'm going to ask you to go out on a limb here. Since now you've gone worldwide, I'm going to ask you to go out on a limb and tell our Income Generation members what your thoughts are.
Well, let me quantify that. There's a couple different answers. If an investor has $1.5 million or less in savings, they should take the risk off the shelf. They shouldn't have any risk because they can't really afford to recover. If you've got $3 million or more in your portfolio, you can afford to take a punch in the nose. But for next year specifically, the risks to the market are not the interest rate movements, but the fact that we could have a Nixonian or constitutional event, which would dampen consumer sentiment, and or earnings would disappoint. Those are the two biggest risks right now.
Okay. Now, where'd you get the $1.5 million from? Talk to me about that.
Well, when we look at how much we have to save and how much we have to live off of, for folks that have $1.5 million, if they experience a 40 to 45, 50% correction, that cuts their money supply in half. Some folks won't live long enough to recapture that while they're pulling money out. So they really need to put risk on the shelf until their portfolio value gets to a certain level. And it's not me, it's the math that says that.
So I guess you're thinking in some ways that, okay, if I've got $1.5 million and I can get 4 to 7%, that's $60,000 to $100,000 a year. I'm not going to run out of money. I'm going to be okay. That's kind of the thought. So
that's correct.
All right. So finally, buying the book, Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up. I think everybody, as part of the income generation, age 50 and over, should go out and buy it as soon as they can. Jeff, tell us, how do they get it?
Well, the best place to go is to go to Amazon, David, but we do have a website for the book called financialplanningrightsideup.com, and it is available at Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Google Books. You can pretty much buy it anywhere.
Financialplanningrightsideup.com. Jeff, thank you.
One by one, the factories shuttered and left our shores, with not even a thought about the millions and millions of American workers that were left behind. But that is the past. And now we are looking only to the future.
If you're a regular viewer of the Income Generation, then just by looking at how I'm dressed today, you will know for sure who our special guest is. In fact, can I get the camera crew to just do a quick close-up on my tie here? I'd like to show the tie, please. There you go. Perfect.
One of the real scandal of the current tax code, put aside GDP and after-tax income and all that stuff, the real scandal is moral. The IRS estimates we spend 6 billion hours a year filling out tax forms. Imagine if all those resources had gone to new products, new services, new cures for diseases. How much better off all of us would be.
Exactly how much can he cut taxes and still maintain some semblance of a balanced budget?
Well, he can cut personal taxes modestly and still have some semblance of a balanced budget, because he would then get some additional growth from people consuming more. But we shouldn't overestimate that. No amount of dynamic scoring is going to make a tax cut equal an unchanged budget deficit.
A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. But I am only against the fake news media or press.
There's no illusion now for anybody who's got half a brain that the media are biased on pretty much every major issue of the day. And since he started his campaign and now that he's president, they have been working aggressively at undoing absolutely everything he wants to do.
What's up, everyone? Well, of course, the answer is the stock market.
I think the regulation rollback and the likelihood that we're going to see taxes decreased as well for individuals and corporates, Dave, I think those are pretty powerful drivers. And the fact that we've got housing starts highest level since 2007 today, I think that also is a significant increase in optimism for the market.
The media doesn't talk about bonds that much. Advisors don't talk about bonds. Wall Street doesn't talk about bonds. Why do you personally believe that is?
Well, bonds aren't sexy. They are the safety investment.
Okay.
They're the income investment. And they don't draw viewers. They don't draw a lot of page views for the web, and those page views end up being advertising income. So most analysts, most programs focus on what draws the most viewers.
So right now, let's welcome back a man who's been brutally honest about his own experience with financial loss. NBA superstar Kenny Anderson. One of your best attributes as a player to get that good that early had to be coachability. So why do you think it was that you weren't as coachable when it came to things outside the sport, such as managing your money?
I think when you get a lot of money, then you become, powerful. So some of your friends and some of the people that deal with you don't know how to treat you. So they all want to be yes men, so you can take care of them.
When I first launched this show, The Income Generation, I wanted to be a different kind of show about investing, retirement planning, and the financial markets. No blaring horns or ringing bells, no shouting, no hype, just good, valuable information aimed at addressing the unique challenges faced by today's over age 50 investor. But to be fair, we want to give you good, valuable information with a definite bias. That bias is if you are age 50 and over, part of the income generation, then you need to focus on income to the exclusion of almost anything else. Sure, if you want to invest your mad money in the markets and invest it for growth instead of income, there are many ways to do that. Just look at the Bitcoin craze. Some call it tulip mania. Some say it's the new safe haven for wealthy investors instead of gold. Either way, it's a gamble. A bet you don't want to make with a majority of your retirement savings if you're at or near retirement. So in conclusion, we are constantly amazed and grateful at the luminaries who want to come on to the income generation. Steve Forbes, for example, who will be returning as our guest just next week. Peter Morici, Robert Schiller, and even our guest today, Larry Winget, are all repeat guests to the Income Generation show. So we began to think that our audience might like to leave a question or two on the topics we'd like to discuss. We'll make sure to pass any questions along to our guests and might even ask them to answer your questions on air. You heard me talk a little bit earlier about the overinflated stock market being like a floating balloon in search of a pin. The question becomes, is it finally going to land on one of those pins in 2018, or might it go on floating for another 12 months based upon hype and hope? Well, if the balloon bursts and the market plunges into a major correction that many experts agree is overdue, history tells us that this could be a drop of at least 40%. The question becomes, are you still at risk of getting caught in that downdraft? These are exactly some of the questions I'll be exploring in detail on my special 2018 Market Forecast show coming up in exactly 2 weeks. No one can foresee the future, of course, but market forecasting is indeed essential for any financial advisor whose first priority is to help his clients protect their money. A good advisor ignores the hype and looks at the relevant details. Some of those details I'll be looking at on my forecast show in the future. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Ah, yes, the Federal Reserve. Their short-sighted policies following the financial crisis helped create this artificially overinflated market in the first place. With a new chairman in place for the coming year, how might their actions or inactions impact the economy and the stock market in 2018? Tax reform. The promise of President Trump's tax plan has been a key market driver ever since the election. The question becomes, will it deliver economically, or as some critics claim, just drive up the deficit and make the rich richer? President Trump, love him or hate him, the constant turmoil surrounding his presidency simply cannot be ignored when looking at factors with the potential to impact the stability. Can you say tweet? Global factors, Korea, Russia, the Middle East, terrorism, hurricanes, wildfires, the list goes on and on and on. And major global events always have the potential for economic consequences, sometimes major consequences. So be sure to join me right back here in just a couple weeks when I'll break down these details and a lot more as I help you prepare for the new year with my special 2018 Market Forecast show. And of course, next week with Steve Forbes and our tax plan. We'll be right back.
When it comes to investing, you always hear that past performance is no guarantee of future success. Yet many investors ignore that mantra and so often make three very common mistakes.
First mistake is chasing returns. This is commonly referred to as rearview mirror investing. This is like driving down the highway only looking in your rearview mirror, and we know how dangerous that can be. Second mistake is trying to time the markets. There's a baseball Hall of Fame, there's a rock and roll Hall of Fame, but the market timing Hall of Fame is an empty room. And the third mistake, most common, is chasing yield. This should be the most conservative aspect of your portfolio, but when you chase yield, you tend to take on more risk than you bargained for.
So don't fall victim to those mistakes. Talk to a financial advisor and have a strategy so that when you find that next gem, make sure not to get in too late or exit too soon. I'm Karina Brez.
You're watching Max to Money.
It's better to give than to receive, so they say. But when it comes to your taxes, giving or gifting could save you money down the road.
The benefits of annual gifting is you get some money out of your estate systematically every year. You can give $14,000 to a child, or if you're married, you can give $28,000 per person. But more important than getting money out of your estate, I think it's important while you're young and healthy to help your kids, whether you can improve their lifestyle, help them with education, you can help them buy a new house, you can help them pay for health care, you can fund education for grandkids.
Gifting to family members involves tough decisions about when, how, and in what form to gift. Before doing so, talk with your attorney and your accountant. I'm Karina Brez.
Get more money news at Newsmax.com.
I'd like to thank our guests for joining us today for another episode of The Income Generation. I'd also like to thank you, our new and returning viewers. For a good part of this past year, I've talked a lot in interviews about the importance of adopting the right mindset for saving and investing, especially in today's environment. By that I mean an environment of uncertainty, and one in which the responsibility of creating a secure retirement plan lies almost entirely on your shoulders, the individual. Not your employer, and certainly not Uncle Sam, but you. All of the year-end checklist items we discussed today are actions that reflect having the right mindset, a mindset right for today's environment, a mindset right for your purpose-based retirement goals, a mindset in which asset protection and retirement income are your top priorities. If you are 50 or over and you're part of the income generation and you haven't yet made the paradigm shift to adopt that mindset, there's another great resolution for you to take on for the year 2018. Thanks for watching. If you're close to retirement and really want to know how to protect and maximize your hard-earned dollars, it's absolutely essential that you stay informed and up to date. And right here is where you can do it on the Income Generation. I'm David Scranton, and thanks again, and we will see you next week. If you're not using someone who's well-trained in fixed income and you're born before 1966, it may just be time for you to break up with that advisor and move on. I would suggest someone who will care for you through these important years of your life. If you need help finding someone, call or write us. I'd also like to remind you of the special report entitled The Income Generation. This is available free to you, our loyal viewers, online. If you haven't downloaded your report, pick it up after the show. If you're near or in retirement, head over to theincomegeneration.com and download your special report written specifically for the needs of the income generation. Again, those born before 1966. I'm David Scranton, and you've been watching The Income Generation. We'll see you all next Sunday.